My name is Helen Wallbey. I am the National Chair for Diversity at the Federation of Small Businesses. I also lecture at the University of South Wales in business, enterprise, startup, entrepreneurship with a bit of a gender focus. And I'm also the only woman in the country that owns a motorcycle scrapyard. So I have direct experience of what it's like to work in a business. I have a small team of staff, and I can experience some of the difficulties the creative sector have from an alternative perspective, because I'm in a completely and utterly male-dominated industry. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Federation of Small Businesses today. For those of you who don't know about us, we are the largest business lobbying organisation in the country. We are non-political, and we are absolutely passionate about championing small businesses, and the lady has gone, but sole traders as well, because it's really, really, really important. I've got a few notes with me because I want to make sure I am bang on with my stats. So we are here to champion small businesses. We exist to protect them. We want to ensure that their voices are heard, because they make up 99.9% of all businesses in the UK. SMEs, sole traders, 99.9% of all businesses. They also account for 47% of private sector turnover, which is massive, and 60% of the private sector workforce. So they really do need to have their voices heard and be represented. We are doing a lot of work around women in enterprise at the moment, so I'm going to give you some stats on it so that you've got a bit of information. We are not doing very well compared to the USA. So, in this country, only 22% of our SME and sole trader businesses are majority owned and led by women. In the USA, that's up to a third. So, we have got a bit of a way to go. This means that women who are aspiring to go into business are going to be faced with some difficulties. But it doesn't put them off, because there's 2.7 million women in this country who would like to be able to be their own boss and have their own business, whether that's as a sole trader or a business with staff, and they are put off for a number of reasons. They have additional barriers. Some of them can be to do with confidence. That tends to come up again and again. We hear about it in lots of reports. Some of them can be to do with access to finance as well. And that's something that we are currently looking at. Now, we know that they don't start and run businesses to the same rate that men do. We know that post-Brexit, we are going to be going through some challenging economic times. So if we can manage to get women starting and running businesses at the same rate as men, this is the untapped potential we could get, okay? 340,000 extra businesses. That's a whopping number, 340,000 across the UK. That will equate to about 425,000 jobs. That is a lot of people, especially in disadvantaged communities, rural areas, who could suddenly get economically empowered. That economic empowerment, if we can bring that to the end result, is going to bring in about 10.1 billion. So even if you are not looking at getting women into business for all of the ethical reasons about equality, you should be doing it for plain financial common sense, because it makes economic sense for us to have women running businesses at the same rate of men. Okay. What do women in enterprise look like? They don't all look like me. I'm not exactly a very typical one. They tend to be concentrated in sectors. If you're looking at any academic papers, if you're interested in doing research, it's generally called the 5 Cs. It tends to be around health, social work, retail work, community work, personal services. They are concentrated in these sectors. There is a significant deficit of women in construction, transport, energy, communications, storage, and obviously there's an enormous deficit in automotive salvage, because there's only me. I don't get to deal with any women at all. However, when we're looking at women that are in business, one thing is quite noticeable. The sectors that they're in, they tend to have lower growth, they tend to have lower turnovers. Now, there used to be a lot of research that said that was because women weren't so successful at business, but a lot of that's now been debunked. There are lots and lots of different reasons why women go into business. So we decided we were going to go and find out why. We wanted to have a bit of evidence to be able to back this up. One of the research findings we found from our survey, and it was our most common finding, was it was because they already had experience in that sector. Now this links to things like what is happening in schools. We've been able to get young people into that pipeline. What is happening at university? We've been able to get people into that work experience. We also found that another one of the really big reasons was because they were confident of their knowledge and skills in that sector. They also had an interest in that sector. They believed that the work that they were going to be doing was going to be something that was interesting. And also, they saw a commercial gap in the market. They saw an opportunity. That was the reason I started my business. I saw an opportunity. There weren't going to be any other women likely to wade into this male world. I thought it would be a good, fun thing to do. We also found that a lot of women felt that employment doesn't give them the flexibility that they may need to be able to balance their family and or caring commitments. So a quarter of our respondents stated that achieving this better work-life balance was a reason why they set up their own businesses. They wanted an opportunity to be more involved in family life, and also they had responsibilities a lot of the time with parents, with elder care as well. So, lots of women operate businesses from home. We have said why, and this is probably one of the main drivers why. If you have responsibility for elderly parents and or small people, operating a business at home means that you are likely to be able to have that flexibility. I operated my scrapyard out of my back garden and my workshop for the first 8 years. Thankfully, I am now in a unit, it has got big enough. But 75% of the women that we surveyed said that they spent between 3 and 5 days working from home. Cheaper overheads, gives you a lot more flexibility in your options. Now, we said earlier that women who are setting businesses up tend to have lower levels of growth. Part of that is sectoral, because of the sectors that they go in, because we know that in those high growth sectors, where you have gazelle and unicorn style businesses, those high growth sectors, women are really, really underrepresented. You hear a lot about the fact it's because women underperform. They're not up to it. They're not quite good enough. You know, men are the people that are really driving business forward. Actually, when you start digging into those figures, when you start really drilling down, that's not true. Because if you account for sector, business age, and individual characteristics such as educational background, age of the owner, women-owned firms are more successful than male-led ones. You don't hear that very often, but that is what happens. When you account for those factors, women are incredibly successful at running businesses, and we need to be able to champion that a bit more. So if we're going to look at us compared to everybody else, how are we doing? How are we doing on a global stage? So if we take 2015, the Global Women Entrepreneur Leaders Scorecard. If you're really interested, I can give you all of the information afterwards, you can go and have a good read. So it ranks and rates opportunities and challenges faced by female entrepreneurs in 31 countries. Where do you think we come? Where do you think we come? We come top for access to resources. We are doing pretty well here. This is due to the fact that we have equal access to secondary education, we have very good access to training, although there are some issues around relevance and time, because we've talked about, you know, people have to give up their time to be able to do it. We also are very good at providing people with the skills that they need. So if you're looking at somewhere like Ghana or Pakistan or Bangladesh, they do not score anywhere near as highly, because for lots and lots of girls, even just accessing education, let alone secondary education, is really difficult. Things like being able to open a bank account on your own, being able to access the internet, those things are not available. Here, we have that. If I want to go and set up a business bank account, I can do it in my name. When my mum first started teaching many moons ago, she had to have a bank account in my dad's name, because she wasn't able to have a bank account for herself. Here in this country, if it's a woman in business, we have a lot more support. So, in the world, we are actually one of the top 5. We beat France hands down. So we are doing quite well on that. We are supporting women into enterprise. But we have a problem. We have a problem with it, and that problem is very much linking to the 2 points you were talking about. It's about pipelines. We have a pipeline problem. We are not great about getting those aspiring young people who perhaps might not engage with formal education and want to do it a bit differently. And those graduates who may need experience, we are not good about getting them into that enterprise pipeline. So there are barriers for women doing that. And a lot of that comes down to themes that have been brought out already, and that is role models. Because you can't be what you can't see. And we need to ensure that there are diverse role models from a really wide range of sectors available to inspire people into all the different businesses. So we're doing okay globally, but there is still quite a lot to do. So I'm going to bring it back to what we are doing. The FSB obviously decided this is something we need to be able to look at. If we're going to look at it, we need to be able to research it, so therefore we need an evidence base. Our best evidence base is our 177,000 members. So we went and spoke to just under 2,000 of them. We thought that was going to give us a good sample response. We then decided that we were going to have some focus groups. We wanted to make sure we were not London-centric, so we went to Cardiff, waving the Welsh flag, because that's where I'm from, Edinburgh, Helmsley, London and Manchester. So we went off travelling, spoke to women all across the country, and discovered that the majority of their issues are the same as anybody who wants to set up a small business. But there were a few additional barriers that we found, that women particularly highlighted. A quarter of the people that responded to our survey said that accessing finance constrained their opportunities to grow. They found that because accessing finance as a woman was difficult, it was constraining their opportunities to grow their business. They wanted to, but they couldn't because of financial constraints. And we also found that 40% of them said managing cash flow, and anybody who's ever run a business knows that cash flow is absolutely the biggest challenge you'll face. They said managing cash flow was one of their biggest concerns. You know, you talked about short-term contracts. How are you going to keep paying the rent, keep paying the mortgage? How are you going to be able to manage that flow? We found that those barriers really did constrain women. Also, this issue that we've touched on briefly, how to balance work and family life. If you have little people, or you have an elderly man that needs to go to hospital appointments and you are responsible for that caring, how do you balance that? And also, how do you achieve credibility as a business owner? You both talked about people viewing the creative industries as fluffy and not taking them seriously. You should try being a woman in the automotive salvage industry who's built like this when you turn up to a yard and say to people, of course I can pull that motorbike apart, and the 6 guys that work there all fall around laughing at you. Just for the first half hour, because by then you've pulled it apart and they suddenly have a learning experience. We did find out what women wanted. So we found out what the problems were, but we found out what they wanted. 55% of the women that we spoke to in our survey, I sound like a television show now, they wanted marketing and online and digital skills. They knew that an opportunity for them to be able to grow was being able to access the digital world. If you are in rural Ceredigion, you can ship globally if you can get access to the internet. So being able to develop those skills was seen as really, really important to them. Also, 40% of them wanted information about how to develop effective business strategy and also how to understand and improve their financial skills. And that ties in, if you're having difficulty accessing finance, if you have a greater knowledge, then you're going to have more opportunities. Well, the government have helped. They have a great business website, which probably nobody in this room has ever heard of. It has got a huge amount of information and support available on it. From feedback, they now have a dedicated page for women in business. The slight problem is very, very few people know about it. So they need to do something to be able to raise awareness, because the women we spoke to when we surveyed them, they didn't know where to go for help. If you don't know where to go, you don't know what's out there. If you don't know what's out there, then you're missing out on opportunities. One of those opportunities is training. Now, we heard about the fact that if you are self-employed, especially if you're a sole trader, you are giving up a day's wages every time you want to go and get trained. So you have to know, is that training appropriate? And lots of people had challenges around finding out, is it actually the right training for me? Is it relevant? Am I going to benefit from it? And then the cost of it. Not only the cost of the course, but the cost of taking yourself away from work, potentially then the cost of childcare as well. So we think that there's an opportunity for the government to do more around supporting women with that. We also think there's a lot of opportunity for the government to raise awareness of the resources that are already there with their Great British website. Childcare came up through the survey. It came up a number of times. Lots of women want to be able to start businesses so that they have more control over their work-life family balance. And childcare was a really big issue because a quarter of the women that we spoke to said that it constrained them growing their business simply because of the cost of childcare and the type of childcare that was available. Especially if they are just starting up, you need to have more time to be able to invest in your business. That means you probably need more childcare. The cost of childcare means that it is really hard for you to balance that because funds are probably very, very tight at startup stage. They also highlighted networks. Now, I know a number of people have travelled today. If you are a woman and you are going to a business networking, they tend to be networking breakfasts or evening events. How many nurseries are open at 6 o'clock in the morning? Not that many, especially if you are not in an urban area. So holding networking events outside of normal childcare times means that lots of women are simply physically restricted from being able to engage in networks. And we all know about the value of developing effective professional networks. So they can't access it. We also found that when we were looking at childcare costs, we also found that maternity pay was a really big issue. So self-employed and sole traders don't always qualify for statutory maternity pay. And it really, really disadvantages them because what tends to happen is they have to go back to work very, very quickly after having a child because they don't have any financial resources. So one of the things that the Federation of Business is asking for, we're lobbying government for this, is that maternity allowance should be brought into line with statutory maternity pay for the first 6 weeks. Well, we've got 4 more minutes, I'm not going to be too much longer. Okay, finance. We were looking at access to finance. I've mentioned about this as being a big problem for women when they're starting up. Look at any academic research, it says, if I start my business up, and the wonderful Mr. Steve, my lovely husband, started his business up at the same time, he would have 1/3 more capital than me. Women undercapitalise their businesses, and that impacts on their opportunities, not only at startup, but through the whole life cycle of their business. It means it constrains their growth. They can't necessarily invest in capital equipment. They may be stopped from getting premises. So this was a really big problem. We also found that women generally, not all women, but women tended to be more risk adverse. And part of that is linked to the fact that they also have responsibility for family and or household finances in many cases. So it meant that they were less likely to take those financial risks. We also found, linking to this idea about not having the financial knowledge, not having the financial skills, when they accessed finance, they toddled off and went to the bank. They tended to access a single point of finance. When you have a lot of financial knowledge and skills, you tend to access multiple points, which means that you can spread your costs, you can spread your risks. Women didn't tend to do that. They tended to get single point, and they didn't tend to use those alternative sources of finance. So they were missing out on a lot of opportunities. One of those opportunities is angel investment. An angel investor doesn't just turn up with a pile of cash. They tend to turn up with their skills, their knowledge, their experience, and their networks. Now, when a woman is starting a business, having that springboard to be able to bounce ideas off, having that support mechanism that somebody can help and guide you is really, really important. So we are really keen that there is more of an opportunity for women to learn about angel investment. We also found that women angel investors tend to like investing in women-led businesses. So there is a great opportunity, not only for women angel investors to be able to support other women, but for women who go to these alternative sources, to have more of an opportunity of being able to actually get the funding that they're looking for. So we need these women angel investors to be more visible. We don't tend to see women in finance that often, and we need to raise their profile. So we think that the government can do things to help encourage and support those women out there who are investing. Crowdfunding is another one. There is a real opportunity for women to be able to access crowdfunding. We found that women on crowdfunding platforms are on average more successful at getting finance than men. And that is because women are more likely to invest in other women's businesses. So the use of crowdfunding was a really fantastic opportunity. If you're getting shut doors from the bank, crowdfunding and angel investment was a fantastic opportunity for women to be able to get those businesses going, raise that startup capital so that they're on an equal footing with men. Okay, last few little bits. Role models. I'm going to ask a little tiny bit of audience participation here. Put your hand up if anybody in your family has ever run their own business or been a sole trader. That's an enormous amount. Okay, because 83% of the women that we surveyed had started their own businesses and had somebody that they had known who had also run a business. It comes back to this idea about you can't be what you can't see. If you can see it, if it is visible in your world, you are a lot more likely to choose it as an option. It was amazing how many of you put up your hands. I would say probably actually was about 80% of you. It was quite incredible. This idea of role models then is really important. If we can get more role models out there representing businesses, then we're going to encourage more people into business. But talking to the women in our survey, they said that lots of the role models that they see in business don't represent them. I'm not running a multi-million-pound business. I don't have 4 beautifully manicured children and a chocolate Labrador. That isn't representative of most people. Now, if we want role models out there, we want role models that represent us, that represent the diversity of people in business. And government has a really, really good opportunity to do that. So do universities and so do schools. They can engage with those role models in their local community, their alumni. They can get those people in to inspire their kids to say, look, this is what people in business look like. And we all look quite different. And girls have a real opportunity to be able to do that because of the issues around confidence with girls at schools. When you can start getting those role models in, it will make a really big difference. I'm going to do a little bit of nationalistic flag waving here for Wales. Yay, Wales! In Wales, we have a fantastic programme called Big Ideas. It has been running for 10 years. It has 350 role models across the country. Everything from a guy who teaches drumming to somebody who is a multi-millionaire and employs about 120 people. And they are really diverse, people from all sorts of industries and sectors. And they go into schools, colleges and universities and talk to people about enterprise. They inspire young people to think, that could be me. I could do that. That is a viable career option for me. And do you know what it looks like? Really good fun. There are also a number of third sector organisations that provide links between business and between education. And there's a wonderful opportunity for us all to be able to collaborate more, share information, share knowledge, to be able to get young girls inspired into enterprise. Last few bits. The research that we've done has taken months. It has brought some really, really good research to the fore. If you want a copy of Women in Enterprise, The Untapped Potential, we are happy to send anybody a copy of our report. We are happy to engage and talk to anybody about the work that we are doing because we are incredibly passionate about informing policy from an evidence base, engaging with other people and collaborating. And although it's not on my speaking notes, I'm going to do a slight little flag wave again. We have launched a national task force today across the whole of the UK with 15 entrepreneurs who are going to drive this agenda forward. And I know Britain is open for business, but the FSB is most certainly open for business. And we really, really want to talk to people. So if you have anything about enterprise, especially enterprise to do with women, young girls, empowerment, come and talk to us. So that is my talk. If there is anything you want to ask me, do feel free. And thank you very much.